Hey friends, this is Aaronica Cole from the Needle and the Bell, and welcome to my sew along for Know Me pattern 2037, which features this here dress as well as a swimsuit that can also be used as a bodysuit situation. So I'm really excited about this here pattern release. Why? Well, for starters, because I'm a plus size woman who designed a swimsuit and I'm on the swimsuit pattern. And that can be a little nerve-wracking. Far too often as women, we will not put on swimsuits simply because we don't meet the standard of beauty. And when I was designing this here release, I wanted it to be the exact opposite. I wanted for women to feel comfortable, confident, and feel like the beautiful specimens that we are when it comes time for us to don swimwear. They could also actually go for resort wear that can transcend either just being a swimsuit or just a bodysuit and really offers a lot of versatility. This here wrap dress is super cute. It has a lot of room. It's got a lot of give. I'm loving the shape of the sleeves and everything like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the inspiration for these patterns. Now, I've touched on this before, that my patterns are in essence designed to create a capsule wardrobe where, depending upon the season, or actually regardless of the season, you can pick and choose and mix and match and really create a dope wardrobe that makes you feel incredibly beautiful. With this here, I was channeling my rich auntie again, right? Now, growing up, I had this aunt. Her name was Julianne. Now, Auntie Julianne, she was diva. When I think of rich auntie, I think of her. She was like the embodiment of it. I swore she would like glide across the floor. Of course, she was just walking, but still, that's exactly what it felt out when I was younger and I would be looking to her. The reason why I wanted to go with this here cover up, and I chose this material for the cover as well as this on purpose because I wanted to, one, celebrate color, but also this here really makes me feel really rich, right? It makes me feel like I too can glide across the floor. And I really feel like I'm embodying my auntie who I lost a long time ago. So I was thinking about her as I came up with the design for this. And I really want each of you to embody that rich auntie feel, that rich auntie motif, that rich auntie attitude as you go ahead and choose your fabrics for this here pattern, okay? So the first pattern that we're going to be doing for our sew along is going to be the bodysuit. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Oop, I'm undressing on camera. Y'all better screenshot this. So on the inside, of course, I actually decided to make it into more of a bodysuit. So I'm using a Peach Performance that's giving me a lot of hold. I also opted to line it with a Spanx-like material, also giving me some additional hold and support that I really enjoy. Now, this here swimsuit, or rather bodysuit, is so versatile. You can wear it with pants, you can wear it alone. It is such a beautiful addition to whatever it is that you want it to be in your wardrobe. I say go for both. I've definitely got one swimsuit and two bodysuits, okay? And then the second part of the sew along is going to be for the wrap cover up. Now listen, yes, it is a cover up, but we can actually hack this to being a full out wrap dress. Now this was really inspired because I wanted to give glam. I wanted to give Hollywood. I wanted to give a little bit of drama, but like not too much, right? So when we were walking, I wanted to show a little bit of thigh action, but I also had to make sure that we had space for snacks, right? Because nobody wants to be hungry. So I'm welcoming you to this here sew along. As per normal with my sew alongs, there will be designer notes throughout, and these are designed just to kind of help you as you navigate the pattern, answering any extra questions or addressing any kind of ideas that might pop up. All right, friends, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, so let's enter our first design note. So when it comes time for you choosing your fabric for this here bodysuit slash swimsuit, I want you to keep in mind that you're going to need something with 4-way stretch. So again, I made mine out of a Peach Performance. My Peach Performance comes from Amanda's Bundles. She sells solely online, and oops. She sells solely online, and I love her fabric, right? So you're going to want to look for something that does have a lot of really great stretch content, but also has good recovery. So rayon blends will not work for this, okay? So let's keep it to cotton lycra, cotton spandex, your swimsuit materials, your athletic knits. Going to be perfect for this project, okay? So choose your fabric wisely, and I can't wait to see your makes. Okay, so I have laid out my lining pieces just so that I can demonstrate some of the things that I just finished talking about in the designer notes section. So again, I'm going to be using my serger only. And so in order to make sure that I keep my seam allowances together, what I'm going to do is make sure that I use my this little tool here, where you can obviously mark off where the 5/8 is. So of course, it's just past an inch. I'm sorry, a half of an inch. So then I'm gonna also just use one of my erasable pens. This is a perfect opportunity to either use one of these, or you can also use chalk, whatever floats your boat. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and just put a couple of little marks where my seam allowance is, just simply so that as I'm serging, I can still be mindful of what my seam allowance is. Because again, I'm going to be using my serger. Now, if you are using your sewing machine, absolutely go ahead. It is not mandatory for you to be using this. I do highly recommend you use either your stretch stitch, which is a zigzag, or you can use something like a lightning stitch, which kind of looks like it's a straight stitch. But this is what that 5/8 seam allowance looks like. So this is going to be my guide. And again, I've already gone over this in my designer note, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be assembling all of my pieces individually. So I'm going to assemble all of my lining pieces first. Then I'm going to be assembling all of my main fabrics. And then I'm going to also be assembling all of my facing pieces together. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and attach all those together. So starting out with just my panty pieces, let's take a look at what that looks like first. I'm going to just be, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create my center seam line down this seam line to create one back piece. Then I'm going to open that up and I'm going to line up my front and my back pieces together, sewing the side seams as well as sewing down this middle area so that that crotch area is completed. Once that's done, I'm going to put that off to the side. Then from there, I'm going to construct the bodice front pieces. Again, we've got our lining piece and then we also have our facing. So for our lining piece, this is the center piece. So I'm going to unfold that, making sure to take into account that nice, beautiful, deep V, okay? Then we have, because obviously I love a princess seam, yeah, I can't get away from them. We're going to do our right sides together, making sure that we match all of our notches up. I've already added my notches here, as you can see by that pink mark there. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I put my right sides together. Now, I'm going to do the exact same thing with this facing piece as well. Once I'm done with that, I am going to go ahead and add in my elastic. The back piece is going to be the piece that's done differently. Again, the reason why I'm assembling it this way is because I've recently just had a double mastectomy. So having my seam lines on my front area is just a little much as far as sensation goes. So I'm going to attach my main piece as well as my lining piece together for the back. And then I'm going to fold that down to create my casing for my elastic here, okay? And then we'll be back. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble those pieces first. The main piece and this back lining piece, I'm going to go ahead and baste those two together so that those pieces can begin to act as one. And I'm heading to my serger to go ahead and do this now, and then I will be back. Okay, so I'm at my serger now, and I'm just going to be using a basic white thread to sew my lining pieces together, simply because it's like this nude color, and I think that that's going to be what goes best. So starting out, like I said before, we're going to be going ahead and sewing our right sides together, and I'm choosing to use the right side as what I labeled my notches together as. So I'm going to go ahead and just widen my stitch length, because on my machine I can just widen my stitch length to match what I need for my seam allowance to be. And again, this is the back part. So just going to go ahead, and my knife is engaged and I'm ready to sew. And I'm just making sure that my fabric is lined up nicely at the bottom, because you do not want to be stretching while you sew. So we've got a nice center seam right now. And so we're going to go ahead and do our right sides together for the bottom pieces again. Again, I'm using the right side as being where I put my notches, so that when I flip it right side out, I can still make sure that my things are lined up the way that they are supposed to be. Now I'm using, as far as a lining fabric, my lining fabric is like the shapewear fabric from Joann's. So it has a little extra compression. Which I think is going to be so perfect for this project, because my main fabric is actually a fabric that is from Amanda's Bundles, and it is a Peach Performance. So that also has some good compression in it, which means that this piece is going to be something that offers a lot of support. So again, we're just going to go ahead, line these things up. And then we're going to just do the other side of this panty, and I'm going to continue to assemble the rest of this swimsuit lining, as well as the base swimsuit, in the exact way that I specified as we were looking at the pattern pieces overhead. So I'm getting ready to put together the strap piece for my pattern, and I wanted to show you how I do this in an easy way that makes turning it out super fast. So this is the piece. We're going to be folding it over long ways, so like this, and sewing straight down this edge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew off a long tail, and that should be pretty good because this is a longer neck tie, or neckband rather. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this tail in the middle, fold it over, and sandwich the tail on the inside. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and sew like we are normally doing. So I'm just folding it over down. And then I'm just going to pull this tail through just to make sure that it hits the end of this pattern piece. Also, by pulling it taut makes it a lot easier to make sure that you don't actually cut it off in the middle, because that's not what we want to do, okay? So now we're nearing the end, and I'm probably actually going to end up cutting my neckband piece a lot shorter. So now we've hit the end here, and you can go ahead and cut this off. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to use this tail piece that connected at the end to pull it through, instead of actually having to take any kind of safety pin or otherwise. So now that I've tucked this beginning part in, I'm going to just go ahead and pull. And again, as I'm pulling, I'm just going to go ahead and straighten this out, because in the beginning, it does need a little help. Needs some help understanding that it's supposed to go through, but I'm pulling this and then straightening it out over here. And then once you get into a groove, that's all you have to do. And as you can see here, we have our neckband completely pulled through without having to use any additional tools. So just a very quick and easy tip for how to do that neckband and turn it out at the same time. Okay, so now that we've sewn together all of those other pieces, it's time for us to base the back pieces together. So I've got my main fabric right here and I've got my lining fabric here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very quick basting stitch all the way around here. This is my bottom part, and I know that because I've labeled it with my notches right here. This is actually going to be where it lines up with the bathing suit bottom. So again, I want this to be facing inside so that I can see exactly what I'm doing. So I am going to put in just a couple of pins to hold it together while I do this basting stitch, because I don't want my fabric to slip around or move as I'm doing this. I'm actually going to pin it on the other side because, as you can see, my lining piece is a scooch bigger than what my actual main fabric is. And because I'm going by what's on my main fabric, that's going to be what's the most important to me. I'm going to be sewing it with the lining side down, and I'm just going to be basting around the perimeter again so that this is not moving while we're actually sewing the front to the back. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to my sewing machine, where we're going to go ahead and add our basting stitch. Now keep in mind, our basting stitch is going to be at the maximum length stitch that we can go, and it's just going to be very close to the edge. So that way, as we go ahead and pick it up, or rather as we sew it together with the serger, it will cut off all of the basting stitch and you won't be able to see it at all. Okay, so we're going to get set up to do this basting stitch now. And again, we're going to go ahead and make this stitch length as big as I can get it. I'm also going to move my needle over a couple of spaces so that I have the space that I need in order to just do, again, a very quick basting stitch. So just going to go ahead and knock that out. I'm going to cut it here. I'm not going to really be connecting the stitches all the way around, only because I really just want it to hold it in place. I don't really care about these corners, honestly. Also, as a reminder, don't sew over your pins. You can get hurt that way. So we're going to stop here. I'm going to take this pin out. I'm going to just go sew down this side as well. And then I'm just going to go ahead and, again, straight line across this back area here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and reset my needle position as well as my stitch length to be what it normally is, because I do need to fold this over and create my elastic casing for the back as well. So again, I've got my markings on the lining piece showing me my top from my bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold this top part down. It's going to just be folded down like this. So I'm folding it over just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and stitch that. I am going to use some clips to hold that in place because y'all, if you follow me, you know that clips are really my preference. So I'm just going to go ahead and clip that into place. I may or may not have had a bad experience with possibly sewing over needles, and I've seen people who've accidentally done it while sewing on their sergers, and it just can't be me. Okay, so we're gonna just go ahead and do a straight stitch. I am going to be using my lightning stitch. Now, if you have a Bernina, it's stitch number 11, but it looks like this. It looks very similar to a straight stitch, and this is what it looks like right here. It looks very similar to a straight stitch. The reason why I'm doing that is because I still need for my fabric to have some stretch, and I don't want to pop stitches. Okay, friends, like, we are not out here to pop stitches, even though this is going to be elastic. Now, if you are like Aaronica, I know that I can actually sew a straight stitch and it will not pop the stitches. By all means, do it your way. If you're like, girl, I'm not exactly sure if these stitches are going to survive going over my thick thighs that don't tell lies, then by all means, make sure that you have got a lightning stitch or another stretch stitch going for you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this stitch in, and then we will be back. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and created our casing, I do want to just show you that using that stitch, it keeps the stretchiness alive here. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and thread through our elastic, so that way our back piece will be completed. Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same thing, and we're going to make the casing on the facing of our swimsuit. So we're just going to, again, be folding this under, and I'm again going to just go ahead and clip this in place. And then we're going to sew in the exact same stitch, that lightning stitch across here, to create our casing for our elastic that is going to give us a little bit of a shelf ride. And in fact, I'm actually going to be doing this on the opposite way, because I want this side of, I want that to be the part that touches me, because again, someone gets a little sensitive with their skin courtesy of surgery. So if you are like me and you're just like, I need help with making it feel a little bit better on my skin, you're going to want to make sure that all of your seams are pointed away from your skin. Okay, so we're just going to do this tuck under, and then we're going to do the exact same thing as far as sewing this together goes. I'm using the lightning stitch again, and I'm just going to be sewing a straight line across here. I'm essentially getting it pretty close to the edge, and then I'm going to thread my elastic through here as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get ready to put all of this together. So individually, we've got our back piece here. We've got our facing piece here. We've got our front bodice piece here. And what I did was I actually went ahead and kind of did like a little color block situation here. I made the darker panels on the outside, and I used the different side for the inside panel. We've got our panty lining, our panty main piece. We have our full lining. Then we've got two leg bands, and then we also have our neck band. So let's go ahead and stack this the way that we are. We're not going to go ahead and add anything with our leg bands just yet. So we've got our, let's start with the bodice pieces first. So this is obviously the wrong side, but I want to piece it with my right sides together. Okay. I know it's like, why are we doing it this way? Because what I'm in essence going to do is flip everything on the inside. So then we've got, this is going to be on the innermost piece. So we're going to put our lining piece. We're going to be putting our right sides together, because again, I want this to be what touches me. So actually, we're going to put our facing piece first, just making sure this is lined up. I am going to be grabbing my this as well. I'm going to snip off the ends. So we have our band. I mean, not our band, but our Here we go. We're going to put that there. And this is, of course, the neckband. So we're going to line this up. And then we're going to put our top lining piece here as well. So we've got all three of these pieces lined up. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I clip where this neckband is being connected. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing to this other side, making sure that I have the right sides facing each other. And then we're going to clip that into place as well. All right, let's get into designer note number 2. Now listen, you can customize the depth in which your V is going down to what is a comfort level for you. Now listen, I've got new boobs, so I'm trying to show them off, right? So we're fresh from double mastectomy as I'm recording this, and I wanted to make sure that I gave a little bit of and showed a little bit of the work that we've been doing, right? Now, if that is not your comfort level, that's okay. You can just go ahead and make sure that you don't deepen your V as much as I did. So that's something to keep note or keep in mind as you're cutting this out, as well as you're sewing it together. I know that we also do have those markings on there that will highlight how deep to go. You don't have to follow it if you don't want to. Go at your pace and make this really custom fit to how you feel comfortable, okay? Also, in addition to that, this is how I'm constructing this swimsuit, given that I'm sensitive to some extra sensations on my body. Constructing it the way that it is in the tutorial is absolutely fine if that's what works for you. As for me, I prefer to have as little seams touching my body as I possibly can. So that's how I've decided to construct this, but there is no right or wrong, just whatever gets you to completion. Okay, so we're clipping this here. I'm just going to go ahead and put my clip in there so it's already holding it in place. And then layer. I have it marked here. So we're going to layer that well. And then layer this on top of that. And now I did put my neckband piece in the wrong area. So I'm just going to move that over so that it's lined up properly, like this. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and sew down this area here, creating one piece. So I'm just going to be doing this line here, down the neckline, and then back up around again. And I will be using my sewing machine to do this because, as you can see here, we want to make sure that that V is nice and deep. We're showing off tattoos and everything. So I'm going to be making sure that I hit that at the same time. Okay, so I did just finish going ahead and stitching this in place. And so I want to point out how I did go ahead and make that a nice deep V. I did not make it deep enough here. So I did go ahead and just redo that, making sure that we are getting as close to that deep V as we can. So now I'm going to go ahead and serge the rest of this. I am going to cut a nice straight line straight down here and get as close as I possibly can to that stitch without actually stitching through it. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I serge everything else. Okay, so now our top looks like this. We do need to press it. It's fine. You can either use this opportunity now to go ahead and top stitch if you'd like to, or you can wait until the end. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and connect our top bodice front to our bodice back pieces. So as you can see here, we've got them to line up straight down here, making sure that we catch in this. So I'm going to go ahead and, of course, using my clips, go ahead and clip this together, making sure that, okay, and so this is what our bodice is looking like. We do need to press it. We will do that afterwards before we go ahead and top stitch. You're always welcome to go ahead and add your top stitch in now if that's easier for you. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step, which is attaching this front bodice to the back bodice piece. So I am going to go ahead and make sure that I line things up. Going to go ahead and clip this into place. Making sure that I do clip in this here elastic casing from my my shelf brought in as well. Going to just go ahead and make sure I clip this bottom piece together. And then I just want to make sure that I line this up the right way, because again, we don't want to stretch it as we're actually assembling it, even though it is a stretch pattern. So we're going to go ahead and clip this into place as well. Now let's go ahead and do the other side. Again, starting with the top. And now if you remember, my lining piece was a little bit bigger. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I'm lining up my main pieces together, right? I'm not saying that those lining pieces don't matter, but listen, those lining pieces, they don't matter. They do what you say to do, okay? And keep that in mind. So clipping that together as well. And then of course, also just making sure that I clip in my shelf brought elastic at the right area so that it provides the support that it's supposed to. Again, I'm going to go ahead and serge these two areas here. What I'm also going to do is line up the next piece of the puzzle, which is our panty part. So I'm going to go ahead and put our right sides together because I do not like to have the seams touching me. So again, this is how you assemble it. If you are someone who is like me and is like, no seams, please. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick my right sides in together. I am going to line it up where my seams are. I'm going to use a different clip here, because this is where we're going to go ahead and make sure that we line up our leg bands. And so I am going to go ahead and essentially clip this together so that this can begin to behave as it's one piece. I'm not going to actually, I'm sorry. Now let's take a look at our panty piece. So we're going to make sure that our panty piece has the right side facing out. So this is the front, and we've got our back piece already to the back. Now we're going to take our lining piece, and again, we want the seams to be facing each other, okay? Because I want this part to be touching my skin, because I don't love the way that the seam feels. Honestly, seamed bathing suit bottoms, or bottoms period, make me feel like something is riding up in my butt, and I don't like the way that that feels. So I do want to make sure that I put this in the right way. I'm clipping where my seams are, because it's important to make sure that your seams line up. And we're going to begin to function as though this swimsuit bottom is now one piece. So as soon as I attach the bodice front to the bodice back, then we're going to go ahead and attach our bodice top to our panty bottoms, creating the one piece, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and clip this to the back. And again, I have my notches marked back here as well as on the inside of the lining piece for where these lining pieces are supposed to be lining up. So I'll be stretching that evenly. Now, if you're someone who is similar to me where you have to grade in between sizes, like my top, I cut like a 22. My bottom is not a 22. So I will be doing some additional stretching here, and that's okay. So if your sizes are not all in one size, that's okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the serger. We're just going to be sewing straight down the sides, and then I'm going to be stretching this so that it fits and it lines up with my notches on the inside with the notches that I have on this inside. Okay. And then the last part that we're going to do is be adding these bands. And With the bands, we're going to be using elastic. The elastic, I want to say, is actually optional because these bands are pretty tight. So if you've tried this on and you're like, this actually feels fine, go ahead and leave it as is. If you need a little bit more tightness, go ahead and add that elastic. So I'm going to go ahead and serge the sides for this and attach the top to the bottom now. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and attached our top to the bottom, we've got the basics of our swimsuit or our bodysuit. The last step for us to do is to go ahead and add these leg bands on. So again, I've already sewn the short side shut. We're going to be folding this over like this. And now our seam allowance is a little bit less, but we're going to be stretching this out so this fits on either side. After that, I am going to press this, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a nice top stitch using, again, my stretch stitch, because listen, these stitches will pop, okay? These stitches will pop over your girl's hips and thighs. So I will be using that stretch stitch, and that's our final step. So let's go ahead and add those leg bands. All right, friends, we went ahead and completed this here bodysuit, and I bet you yours looks amazing. If you've gone ahead and finished it, be sure to make sure you tag me at Needle and the Bell on Instagram or at Aaronica on TikTok so that I can see everything that you're making. Definitely tag me because I want to see it, okay? So now let's go ahead and get into this beautiful cover up. Listen, it's going to give you what you need it to give, okay? So let's go ahead and hop into what pieces we have for those, okay? Now that we've gotten view A completed, let's take a look at everything that we need to make view B, which pictured here is this dress. As you can see by the line drawing on the back, we're going to be having the actual dress itself. In addition to, we'll be having a tie. So let's take a look at those pieces that we need in order to make this happen. Now these pieces are not going to be in numerical order, so forgive me. This is piece number 18. This is the back neck facing. I highly suggest that you cut this on your main fabric. If you run out, it's okay. This isn't exactly seam, but you can also use a complementary colored fabric. You'll also need to cut interfacing for that. We also have piece number 16, which is your pockets. You're going to need to cut 4 of your fabric here. If again, you've run out of your pocket, use a complementary color because these can be seen, but not necessarily on display. Then we've got piece number 17. And piece number 17 comes with both 17A, the extension piece, as well as 17, the entire or the main piece. You're going to need to be cutting 2 of your fabric as well as 2 pieces of interfacing. Now it's important to note that because of the length of this pattern, you will be attaching these A pieces together on all of the actual dress pieces, the bodice pieces. So keep that in mind. I use just some washi tape to attach mine because I prefer to use a little less plastic, and that is made out of paper. Then we have our tie belt, piece number 21. You're going to need to cut 2 of your fabric pieces as well as 2 interfacings of this. Then we are getting into our bigger pieces. So this is piece number 20, which is our sleeve. So you're going to need to cut 2 mirror images of this. Make sure that as you're cutting these pieces out, you're marking your notches for your front versus your back pieces, because the way that the arm side is set up, these are not reversible. So you need to make sure that you're marking those notches so that they are attached the proper way. Then we have piece number 15. Again, this is the extension for 15A so that you can make it longer. And this right here does completely unfold, and this is the side back. Because this dress has a lot of volume, we have a side back and we also have a main back, okay? So 13A and piece number 13, this is going to be your front. You're going to be cutting 2 of these mirror image, okay? Again, this has that extension piece. And then the final piece that you're going to need to cut is going to be piece number 14. And this is 14A down here. As you can see here, that's our extension piece, and 14. And you're going to be cutting 1 on the fold for this. Now I want to just highlight here because I will not be showing this as we sew through this sew along. I will be finishing all of my edges and all of my seams with my serger. You're free to finish your seams however you see fit. And with that, let's go ahead and hop into sewing these pieces together. All right, your first design note for this here beautiful cover up. As you're deciding on fabrics, choose something that is going to make you feel the way that you want to feel. As with all of my patterns, depending upon your fabric choice, it's really going to influence how your pattern comes out. If you're looking for something rich auntie, go ahead, go for your silkies, your satins, your chiffons, okay? If you're going for something that's a little bit more structured as well as breathable, definitely go for a little taffeta action or something along those lines. If you're like, look, I really am looking to make this into a wearable dress, definitely pull out some Ankara or some quilting cotton. Yes, friends, I said quilting cotton. This is an excellent project for that quilting cotton that you have in your house and you're like, what am I going to use this for? This right here. And again, I've shared this before throughout this here sew along. This is a fabric cog. We are looking at between 4 to 7 yards of fabric, depending upon your size. So keep that in mind. So if you have that Ankara fabric that you bought the entire bolt of, that's about 6 yards, it's going to be perfect for this project. So keep that in mind as you're going through this. Now also, this is a really straightforward sew, so there's not going to be a lot of shots of me on the machine simply because I'm doing a lot of straight stitching. But that also means that you may not need to make a muslin, okay? So if you're okay with that, then go ahead and cut into your good fabric. It's okay because this is a really forgiving pattern. It doesn't have to reach across. Now, I just want to show how I am wearing this. As you can see, it's not completely over, but I can do this completely over. Now, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and add some little ties on the inside so that it would stay shut. So that is also an option for you as you're going through this, okay? Beginning with the pieces that you actually need the interfacing on, we're going to start out with piece number 18, which is our back neck facing, as well as piece number 17, which is our front interfacing, as well as piece number 21, which is for our belt. You are going to need to cut 2 interfacing of each of the belt pieces, as well as the front facing. For the back neck facing, you just need to cut 1 piece of interfacing on the fold. Follow the manufacturer's directions on how to attach that, and then let's go ahead and get started with the sewing. Now listen, I can't get away from colorful fabric. It is who I am as a person. I don't know what else to say about that. So if you are using colorful fabric like me, I highly recommend making sure that your serger threads are at least 1 of each color. Now this is just a personal preference, something that I plan on doing with this. But to get started, we're going to go ahead and first prepare our facing pieces. So with our back facing right side up, we're going to put our front facing on top of it and going ahead to pin that together. Now you're going to want to have, this piece is curved, so the curving in is the inside. So we're going to just go ahead and clip this into place here. And then we're going to just go ahead and do the exact same thing with the other side, just clipping that into place. Then we're going to go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to be using a 5/8 seam allowance to go ahead and stitch this together. Now, as a reminder, I said this as we were looking at the pieces, I will be using my serger to finish all of these edges. I have a purple and a pink thread in my serger. That is what I'm going to be using because I do think that as you take a look at the garment on the inside, because it will be seen a little bit, that is something that I'm comfortable with being seen. So we're going to do this first. I'm actually going to put this to the side because I want to talk briefly about the notches that we're going to need to make sure that we have marked on the main pieces so that we can make sure that we leave space for our 1, pockets, as well as 2, the pieces that we're going to add in for the belt loop. Okay, and so I am just going to use my black Sharpie marker because you will be able to see it enough. And I'm just going to lightly dot through here so you can see it there, right, which is important. I'm also just going to come to the edge and mark it right there, as well as making sure that I put in my notch for my pocket. And then of course for all of my pocket pieces, I'm also going to be adding in just a notch so that way it can be seen easily. So now that we've gone ahead and marked our notches, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking piece number 15 and piece number 14, which are my back and side pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and put our sides together and sew these together at the same time as preparing my facing. All right, so another design note. Let's talk about construction. Now we have a 5/8 seam allowance for this entire garment. So if you're someone who is like, you know what, I really like for my seams to be enclosed, I do not love using a serger to finish my seams, that's okay. Do you, boo? You absolutely can go ahead and do a French seam if you want to, so that way your seam is fully enclosed. That's fine. Just make sure that as you're sewing, you're taking into account your seam allowance, okay? So do that math and make that work for you, all right? Okay, so now that we have gone ahead and both put in our regular seam here along with sealing that seam in with my serger, what we're going to do is we're going to be facing our right side up, because now it's time for us to go ahead and attach the front pieces. After we attach the front pieces, what we're going to do is we're also going to make sure that we do a stay stitch around this neckband area, because we don't want this to be moving as we attach it to the as we attach our facing to our front pieces. Okay, so up first we've got our shoulder seams. So we're going to add in our shoulder seams. Once we've added in our shoulder seams, then we're going to go ahead and first add in our serger so that we can go ahead and seal those seams in. And then we're going to do a stay stitch from here and coming straight down. So again, if you're uncertain about what a stay stitch is, it's just essentially a straight stitch that is going to make sure that that fabric does not shift or grow. As you can see, even though this is a woven fabric, there's still some mechanical stretch in it, and we don't want that mechanical stretch to move out of shape and make it so that either the fabric is a little bit longer or shorter than what we need it to be in order for our facing to match up perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and take this to my sewing machine and then my serger and go ahead and add those in right now. So we went ahead and finished up this seam, the shoulder seams. So we've got, of course, our regular stitch with our serger stitch. And I did go ahead and I finished the sides for each of the seams, the side seams as well with my serger. I did this because we've already made the marking for where our pockets and things like that are going to go. So given that information, I wanted to make sure that as I have to come down here, and I made sure that during where I was finishing off these seams, I did not cut off any fabric whatsoever. Literally just enclose the seam. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and clip this together. And I am going to just make sure that I'm able to see my labels for the notches that I marked for where my belt loops are going to go, in addition to where my pocket is. Now I got to be honest, I can't see so well, so I'm going to lay this out. I'm just going to go ahead and grab that piece so that way I can see exactly where it is. So I'm just going to flip this over so that my side seams are here. And now I see that we've got them over in this area. So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I remark this area with my marker again, because what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up, and then we need our little triangle for our pocket. So the reason why I'm redoing this again is because what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it, but then I'm also going to be snipping it slightly. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because as I go ahead and sew this side seam, I want to make sure that I press this area back that's creating the opening. I want to make sure that I'm pressing this area back. That's going to be my side seam because I can already catch that just in the same exact stitch that I'm going to be using for this here regular side seam. And then of course I also need to make sure that I'm adding in my pockets here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my pockets so that I can line those up as well. So we're going to actually add in our pockets first, and then we're going to close up our side seams. So let's grab our pocket pieces, and I am going to go ahead and finish the edges of the pocket pieces, namely because I finished the edges of the other things. And so this will just, in essence, take away another step after I have put it all together, because this side seam has already been sealed in. So what I'm going to do again right now is just quickly on my serger, go ahead and using my serger, go ahead and finish around this here pocket area so that I don't have to worry about these seams fraying. Okay, so what I want to point out right here is just how everything is lined up. I have a clip up here where I'm going to be doing a seam here. The first thing that I'm going to be doing though is putting these pockets in place. So I already have them clipped where they're supposed to be. As you can see here, I already also have this belt loop area clipped as well. So we're going to be sewing that in place, and then we'll be adding the belt loop a little bit later. But for now, the first step is to go ahead and sew each one of these pockets in place using a 5/8 seam allowance. And then we will do the same thing on the other side before we go ahead and enclose the entire seam together. Okay, so I'm getting ready to sew, but what I want to do is show you how I have this magnetic seam guide to help me make sure that I keep my seam allowance and so that it is uniform throughout. This is a universal seam allowance guide that is magnetic. It can go onto any machine. It is not native to Bernina's. So this is something that is super helpful for me. So I'm able to just go ahead and line my garment up with that before I go ahead and get started, to make sure that I know that we are as close and accurate to that seam as we can possibly get. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and just do a straight stitch, stitching in this pocket. I'm just adjusting the fabric. There's a lot of fabric over here, y'all. And because this is a high tension area, so I am going to just go ahead and back sew over that just to give it a little bit of extra reinforcement before I go ahead and end my stitch. And now it's time to do it on my other 3 pockets before we come on back. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add our facing in. So with your right sides together, so this is the wrong side and here are my right sides, you're just going to go ahead and make sure that you are lined up perfectly. I did go ahead and put my clips in where I have my seams at the top, just to make sure that everything is aligned properly. And then you're just going to go ahead and do your basic stitch in here. And again, you don't want to stretch any of your fabric at all. So you're going to just stitch all the way around the perimeter. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish this stitch with my serger once it's in here. I'm also going to finish this outer stitch as well, simply because I don't want that to fray either. And be mindful of the excess fabric. You don't want to accidentally stitch that up too. And if you're like, Aaronica, I don't feel like doing a double stitch, go ahead and just pop this baby on into your serger if that's what you're using to finish your stitches off. And you can also do it that way. I will say that using your serger with woven, you do need to make sure that you're being mindful of what the weave of that fabric is, because sometimes that serger is not going to do your fabric well. So because this is a tighter weave, I would be fairly confident and just using my serger for this. But of course, for sew along purposes, we're doing everything the right way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and then we're going to seal this with the serger stitch. So now it's time for us to go ahead and get started on the sleeve, which means that we are finalizing this project. So there's a couple of things that I want to point out here as far as notches going. This double notch differentiates the back from the front arm seam, and then we're doing a slight gather up here in this top area here. So for me, I always mark the back sleeves. So I'm just going to put, again, just a small mark here, just to show that this is the back. I'm also going to use this opportunity to just go ahead and kind of mark where it is that I'm going to be running my gathering stitch through, so that I know that as well. Even though I marked the back on one, I do want to make sure that I mark my gathering stitching or the gathering spots on the other side of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and transfer this mark as well. Again, most people would not recommend using a Sharpie marker. I can guarantee that it is not making a difference for me on this fabric because it looks like it is just the marks from the floral. And so I know exactly what I need to do now. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to take this over to the machine, the sewing machine. Now I normally gather on my serger, but for this here fabric, I am going to just use my sewing machine, and I'm going to run just a very gentle gathering stitch from here to there. This is just so that I can ease my sleeve in. There's really not a whole lot of actual gathering that's happening. It's really just to make it easier for me to ease that sleeve into the arm seam, which has already been formed. So we're going to go ahead and do the gathering stitch from here to there. We've already differentiated our back from our front. And so we're going to go ahead and do that gathering stitch now before I go ahead and close the sleeve up and add it to the actual bodice. Okay, so as you can see here, I did go ahead and finish the sleeve here. I also did go ahead and add a serger stitch to this end of the sleeve so that I can just simply fold it up and create a narrow hem. And then also just noting here how I did go ahead and run this gathering stitch. Now it's time for us to go ahead and take our garment. Now again, we did mark the front from the back. So this is the back piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming over to my garment so that I can match up this back piece, and we're doing right sides together. So I am going to flip this out. So we're doing our right sides together. And again, this one is the back. This needs to be facing the back. So if I were to put this is going to be the sleeve that it goes on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it over to begin to match up where my seams are. I'm going to clip right there. And I'm just going to make sure that I slowly go around. And this is when we say that you have to ease in your sleeve. This is exactly what we mean by easing in the sleeve. Not to be confused with folding in the cheese for my Schitt's Creek fans out there. So we're easing the sleeve on into the arm seam. And you want to make sure that you do this beforehand, just in case you have to adjust your gathering stitch, because you do want your gathering stitch to do what it's supposed to do, right? Which is supposed to be making it so that it's easier for you to ease your sleeve on in. So just pinning this in place. And it looks like this is going to be a perfect fit. So I'm just going to add one more clip in here. Then we're going to do the same thing on the other side before going ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and put in my straight stitch around, and then I'll be finishing it off with a serger stitch as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to do our last couple of steps before we're finished. The first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and prepare our belt loops. I did accidentally cut 2 of them. I don't see a problem with that. I do think I'm going to use both of them, oddly enough. So what we're going to do is we're just essentially going to be folding this in half, stitching this down the side and turning it out and cutting it in half to create our belt loops. I am going to use both of these pieces because one side of my garment is heavy on the pink side while the other side is heavy on this blue side, and I would like to match. So I am going to do that. The next thing that we are going to do is we're also going to finish up our belt loop. Our belt loop is very, very easy. The only thing that we have to do is we're going to sew a straight stitch down here. Now this is what I like to do. I like to sew and leave a little hole on the inside of here. So that way, when it's completely outstretched, and then we sew this together because we're going to fold this over the long way. So that way, when we fold it over this way and we do sew it around the perimeter, I don't have to worry about hand stitching or doing any leaving a hole over here. Because the hole will be over here, I don't even have to worry about actually stitching it closed because I can just wear it on the inside as opposed to the outside. So we're going to go ahead over to the machine, knock these two last things out. I will not be using my serger to finish either one of these. These will be done only on the machine, and then we will be going on to adding our belt loops to the garment. So our belt is finished, as you can see here. We've got this, and I'll show you where I put the hole. It's right here. And so even with that, you can just simply tuck that in. And then this is going to be the part that's up against my body. You won't even be able to tell. Yeah, I love just an easy hack, okay? So now let's take a look at our belt loops. As you can see here, I did finish them both. I'm just going to fold this in half, and I'm going to cut it in half like so. And so now I only need two of these because I only will be putting them on outside of the holes that we left. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my piece. Now for the first belt loop that we put on, let me just go ahead and find it. Whew, it's a lot of fabric, friends. Okay, so this is our first hole right here. So our first belt loop, we're going to just go ahead and kind of hit it like this. And then we're going to flip it over, tuck this under, and then attach it that way. So this is the reason why I wanted to make sure that I had them cut of each color, because it almost camouflages this hole here that was left. So we're going to go ahead to the machine and do that on both sides now. All right, friends, so the last step of this pattern is to go ahead and hem. Now the pattern does call for a narrow hem, and if that's your jam, like working with a rolled hem foot, absolutely do that rolled hem. It'll tuck in everything so perfectly. Now, me personally, the rolled foot and I, we are just not BFFs right now. I'm still trying to navigate why it does not love me the way that I love it, right? So an easy hack for that is to just go ahead and finish that edge with your serger, or however you like to finish your edges, and then just flip it over and then just do your narrow hem that way. No one is here to judge whether your hem is super narrow or not, okay? So now that we've gone ahead and finished up this pattern, I hope that you are in love. I hope that you feel comfortable and confident so that you can showcase your beautiful body out at whatever water side that you see yourself at, whether that's poolside, oceanside, lakeside, yachts. Listen, if you're on a yacht, make sure you tag me, okay, friends? Wherever it is that this summer sees you, I hope that you feel as beautiful as you are. Thank you so much for joining me for the Sew Along for ME2037, and I can't wait to see all of your photos of your makes as well. Until next time, happy sewing.